What if I told you we could peek into the future, not with a time machine, but with something you see every day, a newspaper? Well, that's exactly what we're going to do. We have the Saturday edition of the Wall Street Journal from January 24th, 2026, and we're going to deconstruct it piece by piece to see what kind of world it's describing just a couple of years from now. Let's see what tomorrow's headlines can tell us about our world today.
And this image of President Trump at Davos really sets the scene, doesn't it? It's that classic mix of old guard power and, well, total unpredictability. It really makes you ask the central question here. What can a single day's news really tell us about the world we're all heading towards?
Okay, so here's our game plan. We're going to look at 4 big themes. First, we'll start with the global picture, a pretty volatile world stage. Then we're going to follow the money, because it looks like there's a huge scramble for cash going on. After that, we'll zoom right in on the battlegrounds popping up here in America, and we'll wrap up by looking at a fight over the country's identity itself.
All right, first up, a volatile world stage. It seems global tensions are hitting a boiling point. The foreign policy coming out of Washington is, to put it mildly, aggressive and unpredictable, and it's sending some serious shockwaves around the planet.
I mean, just get a load of the headlines from the last 3 weeks. In that short span, the administration has deposed Venezuela's leader, threatened its neighbors with military action, hinted at new strikes on Iran, and kicked off a massive diplomatic crisis over trying to acquire Greenland. It's an absolutely dizzying pace of events, and it's got allies and frankly even Congress just scrambling to keep up.
But this stuff isn't happening in a vacuum. We're starting to see allies push back. Over at the World Economic Forum, the Canadian Prime Minister, Mark Carney, had a pretty pointed message. He called for smaller countries to band together against economic coercion from the big guys, which, let's be real, was a clear shot at the United States.
And President Trump's response? Wow, it was just as direct and very personal. No room for misunderstanding there. The message was loud and clear. Loyalty is expected. You know, this isn't just a simple diplomatic disagreement. It feels like we're watching a public crack in the relationship between two of the closest allies in the world.
So how's all this global drama hitting the economy? Well, it means investors are basically on the edge of their seats, reacting to every single headline and tweet. It's created this roller coaster of a market that's in constant motion, super volatile, but so far also surprisingly tough. So, if the global stage is this chaotic, where is the smart money actually going? Well, the headline suggests something called the Great Money Scramble, where all this uncertainty is creating huge opportunities for some. Let's just start with this number. $3.5 trillion. That is a record-breaking amount of money, and it's what hedge funds are now managing. I mean, that is just a staggering figure, and it tells you so much about where things are headed financially.
And here's the context for that massive number. 2025 was the best year for hedge funds in more than a decade. You see, these funds thrive on volatility. So in this kind of environment, they are absolutely cleaning up, pulling in more new investment than they have since right before the 2008 financial crisis.
And this isn't just an old trend. It looks like it's getting even stronger. A Goldman Sachs survey shows that a record 45% of institutional investors are planning to increase their exposure to hedge funds in 2026. Basically, in a world that feels totally unpredictable, these funds are being seen as one of the safest bets around.
But it's not just the big institutions. Some of the richest people on the planet are also making huge moves, not just in the market, but in the political world too.
And a prime example of this? Elon Musk. After spending nearly $300 million in the 2024 election, he's firing his whole political machine back up for the 2026 midterms. He's already dropped a cool $10 million on a single Senate race. And the strategy seems pretty clear. Get the Trump base fired up not just for the big presidential race, but for all the down-ballot Republican candidates too. We're talking about a massive injection of private cash that could seriously reshape the political map.
Okay, so we've got global instability and this wild scramble for money and influence. Now let's bring it all back home and see how these big forces are creating actual battlegrounds right here in America, turning local politics into major flashpoints.
Look at this. The huge national debate over immigration is spilling into the most normal, everyday places. We're looking at federal agents in tactical gear just walking through a Target in Minnesota. An aggressive federal immigration crackdown in so-called blue cities has turned places like this into front lines, forcing companies, politicians, and everyday people to choose a side.
And this whole issue is creating a huge rift inside the Democratic Party. On one side, you have progressives like Peggy Flanagan, who are basically saying ICE has lost all public trust and needs to be completely rebuilt from the ground up. But on the other side, you've got centrists like Angie Craig, who are warning that all this abolish ICE talk is scaring away voters and that the real focus should be on reform and winning elections. It's a fundamental split over strategy and values.
And you know, these local battles aren't just about hot-button issues like immigration. Over in San Francisco, a similar fight is brewing over housing. And the unlikely center of it all? This big Safeway supermarket and its giant parking lot.
So on one side, you've got pro-development folks, the YIMBYs, who are saying, hold on, why does a parking lot get a waterfront view when our city has a massive housing crisis? But on the other side, you have local residents and officials who feel totally blindsided by a developer's plan to put up a 25-story tower here. They're accusing them of using state laws to sneak around local rules. It's that classic city conflict, the desperate need for more housing versus protecting a neighborhood's character.
And that brings us to our final section, which might be the most fundamental conflict of them all. It's a battle over America's history, its own story, and really, what it even means to be an American in 2026.
In Philadelphia, this battle over history is becoming very, very real. After a presidential executive order aimed at restoring truth and sanity to American history, the National Park Service removed an exhibit. It was an exhibit detailing the lives of the people who were enslaved by George Washington at the very site where the country was founded.
The newspaper describes the scene with this line: "Empty bolt holes and shadows are all that remains." It's such a stark physical image of this larger fight over which parts of our history get told, which parts get remembered, and which parts get erased. So after digging into just one day's newspaper from January 24th, 2026, a picture starts to form. It's a world defined by conflict, on the global stage, in the financial markets, on our city streets, and even in the stories we tell ourselves about who we are. What's so clear is that all of these fights are connected. They're all feeding into each other. And that leaves us with one big, urgent question. What story will tomorrow's headlines tell?